Thanks for checking out this video. So this is where I'm going to go over all the subscriber Vinegar Syndrome releases for April, and I already did kind of like my haul video of them, showing them and really showing off their packaging and reading the description of the film and everything. So you can check that out already on my channel. Now this one, like I've been doing each month, I'm just going to rank and talk about briefly, review-wise, these releases. And this is the first time so far this year that the order in which I was excited about these ended up being the order in which I'm ranking them. So if you remember that, you'll know where I'm going. So there's only 3 for this situation, because also I didn't buy any of the additional stuff either. So, yeah, just going to go over these subscriber included ones. So the first one, which is the one I like the least, but it's still a fun enough watch, is The House Where Death Lives. This one was very well shot, very well acted. I do have to say that. Those are the 2 very strong points of the film. It's basically about a woman, this woman right here, who is a helper, an aide for this older gentleman here, who lives in a very nice house, almost mansion-y, and he has a son who has some psychotic issues, who kind of is squirreled away in his room. So she's there to kind of help with that, also help her out around the house with other stuff. And then eventually his grandson shows up, who just lost his parents, and he's kind of like not familiar with normal city living. He's kind of from way out in the countryside, so he has a hard time adjusting. And obviously it's a horror film, so people end up getting bumped off one by one, and it's this kind of question of like who is doing it. So the film itself is very slow. It is unbelievably slow, in my opinion, for what the film is, for what the story itself is. So for that reason, I didn't love it. It was still decent enough to watch once. I did like the overall story of it. I just thought that it took way too long to tell that kind of simplistic story. Had this film been cut down a bunch, like maybe a half hour, 45 minutes cut out of it, it would have been actually quite a good time, because like I said, it looks really great, it's shot very well, and the acting is really, really good. There are some interesting characters in it, so I can see some people really liking this one. I can see some people really not liking this one, mainly because of the pacing, but it was fine. It was fine. As far as like the special features go, just telling you right now, I don't do the commentary tracks, because that would just take way too much of my time that I really don't have, unfortunately. So someone else doing a review would have to speak to that. But I watched the other ones, so they do have a commentary track with Hysteria Continues, which I understand that they usually do a pretty good job. There's an interview with actor John Dukakis. Now, some people may hear that name and think, huh, that sounds familiar. Yes, he is related to the man in politics who did run for president once. So, yes, that Dukakis. His interview was pretty solid, just his kind of experience on working on the film. He had very fond memories of it, which was great, and really complimented all the people involved in the film, which is a very professional thing to do no matter what. So that was a pretty good interview. Then there was Stuck in That House, an interview with actor David Hayward. Also complimented everyone involved, thought the film was pretty good, gave some interesting kind of anecdotes about, his involvement with the film and the time filming it. So that was pretty cool. And then Madhouse, author Stephen Thrower on The House Where Death Lives. Now, this was the best special feature, in my opinion, because I've seen ones by Stephen Thrower before, and he brings the knowledge, and he's very engaging to listen to, so it's a lot of fun. He gives some really good insight into the film, the importance of the film, and kind of breaks down some of the importance of how they set the film up the way they did, some of the plot structure, and what they were trying to do with the movie. So, yeah, it's pretty good. So, special features I did like on this one. Movies, okay. I would recommend it for people who, read the synopsis of this film, or just go off what I was talking about and enjoy it. It also has some good set design that helps, have a nice kind of creepy atmosphere to it, so that's always good. And also, I just love this artwork. That's really cool. Anyway, that is The House Where Death Lives. So my number two film of the three, this one, it was a close call for first because I really did enjoy this one as well, and that is Lady Reporter. Obviously, it's a martial arts film. It stars Cynthia Rothrock in it, this is one of the subtitled ones. So she's basically an undercover agent who is in Hong Kong, and she is posing as a reporter, but she can't stay a reporter because she has to get involved in some things, and people start to see, oh, she isn't just a reporter, like she has all these great martial arts skills, she's a badass. And so that gets showcased. Obviously, being a martial arts film, there needs to be plenty of action, plenty of fighting. And I will say that the fighting in this, those sequences are stunning. They're very cool. The choreography is wonderful. Obviously, Cynthia Rothrock, being the professional she was and is, does a phenomenal job. The weird thing to me is that she has said before that she has been dubbed over in English in movies she's been in, and it's not her voice, which is kind of a weird thing. That's not connected to this film because there is no English dub option with it. It's in either Cantonese, I think Cantonese or Mandarin are the two options. Oh no, sorry, there was an English language export version, yes. It includes both the 88-minute Hong Kong theatrical version, which is what I watched, and that's in Cantonese, and then it has, obviously it had subtitles too in English, and a 90-minute English language export version. I did not watch that version, I just watched the theatrical version from Hong Kong, because I want it to be like authentic for what it was supposed to be. So yeah. But this one was a lot of fun. Like I said, the action sequences are pretty impressive. There's some really wild stuff, like one scene in particular where she's fighting all these dudes on this giant, like, what's about, like, net that's kind of like strung up from the ceiling and comes down in like a teepee kind of shape. And she said in her interview that it was very difficult to do that, and that it was it took a while, and she was pretty nervous because it's not something she had done before. But I will say it looks awesome, and it's something that's very outside the box. And that's one of the things with the choreography with this film, is a lot of it is very outside the box. Obviously, with a martial arts film like this, it's not about the story. The story is nothing special at all. It's very basic, whatever. The characters are just whatever. They're very like slapsticky, ridiculous, stupid. They say a lot of dumb stuff. There are a lot of scenes that you can tell are just filler, which ends up making even more sense after you see the interview with Cynthia Rothrock on this, and she says there was no script, and they're just like, that makes so much sense. But anyway, talking about her interview, let's talk about all the other special features. They do have a commentary track with martial arts film historian Frank Zheng, for the Hong Kong version only. I did not do that. No mediocre action, an interview with Cynthia Rothrock. If you haven't seen any interviews with Cynthia Rothrock, she is a joy. I love hearing her talk, and she seems like just such a nice person. But she always brings so much information about the film that they're talking to her about, which has not been the case with some of these Italian releases that they've had this year, where they're talking to people who are involved in the films, and the majority of the time they're talking about their careers, and then they'll devote like 2 minutes of like a half-hour interview just to that movie. When she talks about a film, she talks about a film. She has all sorts of interesting stories about the set. She has all sorts of interesting stories about the choreography that she had to do, and just, yeah, so she's great. She adds so much to the special features with her interviews, so I loved her interview. Then there was one playing the villain, an interview with Vincent Lin, who actually is like best friends with Cynthia Rothrock, which is really, really cool. And he had some really cool things to say about the film and his experience with making it. Also his relationship with Cynthia. But also in the end, he was talking about how what he does now is he has a nonprofit organization that helps with saving kids from war-torn countries. And that is extremely admirable, obviously. I mean, good for him. That's awesome. Then they have Cantonese theatrical trailer, English trailer, image gallery. They do have a booklet in this one, which I'm going to pull it out just so I can read you, because I don't remember what the title of the essay in this was. But the essay was really good, as are most of, or all of the essays so far that I've read that Vinegar Syndrome releases. Okay, so it's this one: Skirt-wearing inspectors, action and cultural barriers in Mang Hoi's Lady Reporter. So it was very interesting. They kind of talked about the idea of like the lady with a gun type of films that ended up coming out of Hong Kong, and how this kind of preceded that, but was that type of thing of more like a female empowerment, like bigger roles for women, having them be the heroes in these films when they typically weren't, and how important this film was in that pantheon, specifically also what Cynthia Rothrock brought to those types of films. So really interesting educational essay that's kind of academic in the way it reads. So this is a very good release in my opinion if you like martial arts. Like I said, I almost put this as my number one. It was very, very close. So this one, really good time. It's not my favorite Cynthia Rothrock. If you want to know what that is so far that I've seen, that'd be Righting Wrongs and Undefeatable, for different reasons. Righting Wrongs is actually like a really good martial arts film. Undefeatable is like a fun, ridiculous, so bad it's good martial arts film. So anyway, Lady Reporter, good stuff. Getting distracted. There's a cat running around. You might hear her meowing. I did get 2 new cats, so one's upstairs. You might also hear them running around. They're a kitten. This one's 5 years old. She meows. The kitten does not, for some reason. Anyway, getting to my number one, which I was most excited to watch, Witch Story. This is an Italian-made film that was done in the United States, and it is in the English language, so it's not subtitled, so people who don't like subtitles can kind of rest easy. Witch Story is basically, they have this sequence in the beginning where they show that there was a woman who ended up being killed in this town for being a witch, basically. And it was she's tied to this house. And fast forward a bunch of decades, and there are some kids who are having a getaway, and I guess one of their family members happen to own this property, so they're going there to like hang out and party and kind of maybe do a little bit of fixing it up as well. And it's just kind of like dumb, stupid fun. This is one of those so bad it's good type films, which is right up my alley. And I especially like the English language and made in the US Italian made films, because they have this really odd, over-the-top, ridiculous feel to them all the time, and this one is no exception. When the kids all end up going into the house, obviously people start to die. There's kind of this whole like possession thing that happens, and they're knocking each other off. And most of the kills aren't great. Some of the kills are kind of fun. But it's goofy. I love the dialogue for how ridiculous and stupid it is. The characters are really ridiculous and fun. Their dialogue between each other is a lot of fun. I think if you like stuff like Night of the Demon, you'll probably like this one. Or Night of the Demons, yeah. So let me read to you about the special features. Oh, and it's 4K, obviously. Directing a Witch Story, an interview with director Alessandro Capone. This is one of the situations where he talked a very little bit. Like, how long was this interview? It was 32-minute interview, and he just devoted the smallest amount of time to actually talking about this film specifically. But one of the things he said, and everyone else who was interviewed for these special features said, was that they had a problem in the town in Florida that they shot, because people got wind that this was a horror movie, specifically a witch film, and they didn't want to have anything to do with that because they thought it's demonic. So there were all these protests trying to shut it down. They actually got kicked out of one of their shooting locations at one point. They also had an issue where they had the actor, I think Ian Brennan, who was a SAG actor. All the other actors in this film were not SAG, but Ian Brennan, who they brought in from the UK, was a SAG actor, and he couldn't be in the film in the United States without them having to make everyone a SAG actor. So what they ended up doing to have to get around that and appease SAG, well, basically circumvent what SAG was trying to make them do, they ended up shooting the portions with Ian Brennan in Italy. So they were trying to shoot everything in the United States, but weren't able to do that. They had to shoot for a week in Italy, and they did have to bring some of the American actors out to Italy in order to do that. But most of it shot in Florida. So those were some interesting anecdotes. But everyone commented on the issues that they had with the local people there who just did not want them there. There were some real challenges. But also Capone also talked about the fact that, and this is pretty terrible, and he seemed to be kind of like nonchalant about it, which is pretty messed up. The fact that they had pyrotechnics issues at one point, there was like an explosion involving this little girl. She was supposed to be near an explosion. It was supposed to be a controlled explosion, and it was bigger than it should have been. And she got scared, and she was really upset, and her parents immediately like took her off the set and were like, no, we're not, she's not having anything to do with this anymore. So they had to make do with whatever footage they had left at that point for her. But he kind of like laughs it off to a degree, and he literally says like, I don't know how she wasn't killed, and doesn't act like it's all that serious. So kind of not great. But it scared other people as well. And he really chalks it up to the fact that he's saying that like, basically explosive experts in the United States for movies are just way better at their jobs than those in Italy, because that's where they ended up shooting. It was in Italy for that point when they were there for that week filming. So anyway, then they had an interview with producer Giuseppe Persoli. His interview was very similar to Capone's. The Light of Witches, an interview with cinematographer Roberto Girometti, was also very similar to the other interviews. They just talked a very little bit about their involvement with the film, and then mainly talked about other directors they'd worked with and their careers and stuff like that, which, it's interesting to a degree, but I want a lot more about the specific film. But like I said before, like that's been a theme with a lot of these interviews that they've gotten for these Italian-made films, is that they primarily are focusing on their careers and like other people they've worked with and other films they've done, and devoting very little time to the actual film that the special feature is for. So that's weird. Then they have the Brit Connection, British Actors in Italian Horror. This is a video essay by Mike Foster. That was fascinating. A very, very interesting watch, where he brought a lot of cool information about British actors' history in acting in Italian film, and going into depth about these different actors, which reminds me that one of the things they talked about in these special features is that for the role that Ian Brennan ended up playing, they originally wanted Donald Pleasance. But the interesting thing is, Ian Brennan was like a more sought-after actor at that time, and not Donald Pleasance. They just wanted Donald Pleasance because the director really loved John Carpenter's Halloween, and so he just wanted to have Pleasance involved. So yeah, and you can see like some influence from Carpenter in this film as well. I mean, it's pretty well shot actually, all things considered. So that special feature was really cool. And then An Italian Witch in Florida, an archival making of documentary featuring interviews with director Alessandro Capone, cinematographer Roberto Girometti, and composer Carlo Maria Cardio. That one was actually a lot of retread of the information that you already got from the individual interviews. So it kind of, you got a little bit extra here and there. It was like 44-minute long documentary, so it does give you some extra stuff, but there's so much that is just repeated from those interviews, so it kind of just feels like, okay, maybe not like the best use of my time, but overall this is a really fun release in my opinion. I can see a lot of people liking this. If you like So Bad It's Good films, if you like those Italian-made films in the United States, you're probably going to have a fun time with this one. So that's why that's my number one. So that's it. That's my ranking for the month. The May one is going to be hard, because there's going to be a lot of films for that one. It may be briefer on all the films when I talk about them, but because I can't do like a whole half hour, 40 minutes, whatever, because I do these videos in one take. But anyway, put some comments down there. Did you get any of these films, and what were your thoughts on them? Or just hearing what I said about them, are you interested in any of them? What are your thoughts? Or just, talk about whatever you want, horror related or otherwise. I don't really care. I'll talk to you. Do me a favor, hit subscribe to my channel. That's your best way to repay me for all the free content. Give the thumbs up on any video you see of mine. That helps with the YouTube algorithm. And you can hit the notification bell button if you want to know when I'm putting up new videos. But regardless, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And until next time, keep it brutal.